Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Yeadon. I'm the CEO and co-founder with Impetus Digital. At Impetus Digital, we have built some of the best-in-class asynchronous and synchronous virtual collaboration and communication tools. We have worked with life science companies from across the globe over the past 13 years to help them with everything from virtual advisory boards, online medical education, virtual investigator meetings, and all sorts of other collaboration opportunities. And since the launch of our award-winning Insight Events platform, we've also been helping pharma companies with virtual innovation hackathons, corporate meetings, and things like large-scale MSL and sales training. But more importantly at Impetus, we really believe that everything starts with a conversation. And from these big, hairy, audacious conversations with some of the leading-edge thinkers, digital provocateurs, and healthcare thought leaders, we can all work to collectively and positively disrupt healthcare. So I'm super excited to having one of these thought leaders at the table with me today. And this is actually Jim Havelka. He has over 25 years experience in building, funding, and leading all sorts of advanced technology organizations. He is currently the founder and CEO of a company called InformAI. This is a company that provides healthcare and medical clients with artificial intelligence-enabled solutions. This is helping to improve patient outcomes as well as company operational efficiencies. So prior to starting InformAI in 2017, Jim was a senior executive and partner at several leading global business and IT consulting organizations, including KPMG, Bearing Point, as well as Infosys. He received his MBA from Rice University and a bachelor's and master's degrees in math and mechanical engineering from Texas A&M University. He has also completed executive education programs from Harvard Business School and Stanford Business School. Welcome, Jim. So happy to have you on the show.
Hi, Natalie. Thanks for having me here today to be able to tell our story.
Absolutely. Very exciting. I always like to start off by asking people, very interesting background that you've had, obviously a lot of work in the consulting space. Tell us about the career trajectory and how you ever decided to found a company that's all based on artificial intelligence.
Yes, I've spent, as you outlined, a good part of my career working in and around large IT systems and analytics systems. Coming out of school, I had an opportunity to work on projects for NASA. And out of that work really got me quite excited at how to use cutting edge technology to improve decision-making. And so over a period of my career, I've had the opportunity to work with very large commercial and government healthcare organizations to utilize those sorts of tools to improve decision-making, speeding up decision-making. And as I started to look at that, I realized there's a large amount of data embedded in many organizations. As we all know, there's a large digital transformation ongoing now with many organizations, but especially in the healthcare field, I saw a large amount of data. Most hospitals on an average year, if you look across North America, generate about 50 petabytes of data. That's 50 million gigabytes. And as we were putting in large systems, I saw an opportunity to get a lot more focused with the company to look at specific opportunities in the medical field to benefit the clinicians. And so thus in 2017, myself, along with venture capitalists, put the seed funding in to start InformAI.
Interesting and very, very amazing. So you have worked in a variety of different verticals and spaces. I was just curious about your particular tendency to stay focused on medical and healthcare. What sort of problem sets were you facing that you found were essentially very provocative for you want to stay and build a system and a company in this area?
Just from my history in working in these systems, and what I wanted to focus on with InformAI is how to pull these data sets together. If you look at the healthcare industry today, there's a large number, very large institutions, but the data sets are very decentralized. And therefore, the power of the data to assist in making improved decision-making or improve patient outcomes, that isn't there. And if you couple the convergence of availability of data, the movement of technology, meaning artificial intelligence, and also the infrastructure to process large amounts of data, there's a point in time now where those three trends are coming together that allow problems to be solved that just 10 years ago those pieces weren't fully intact. And so when I look at and the discussions we have with clinicians in healthcare institutions, the power that you can bring by looking at data insights across clinical data, medical data, past historical data on patients relative to patterns that we see in the general population is quite powerful. To put that in the hands of a clinician to incorporate into their patient treatment plans.
So let's think backwards a little bit into prior to 2017. And this is even prior, obviously, to COVID. So what were clinicians doing back in the day? Yes, they were collecting lots of data. People were looking at data, but what was the typical workflow, if you will, of a typical clinician, or, those are the people that you're specifically targeting. What was that regular workday looking like? What were they doing, and how were they at that time making decisions for patients?
Our company, InformAI, we focus first in working with primarily surgeons on surgical procedures, looking at patient outcomes, and then also with radiologists to look for medical features that are present in the medical image set. And that could be oncology based or vascular based in what we're building. And looking at kind of, if we were looking back 10 years ago, the clinician workflow was very decentralized and fragmented. And you see kind of surgeons or clinicians learning over a period of years what are some of the patterns that they started to see with their patient sets. They might have had data sets unique to their institution. And so they made decisions based on that availability. We have the power today to go look across very large data sets and see what the patterns are that are unique to a wide range of the population, both age, gender, as well as comorbidities that they may have. And so access to that larger data set and correlates to better and improved insights for the patient. One of the products that we've gone through FDA approval involves sinus detection for sinus disease. We're CE marked cleared. And one of the things we tell ENTs and radiologists is it's got the equivalent of 30 years of a person's career of seeing patients built into the pattern recognition. And so the power of that and leverage of that is quite powerful.
So that actually brings me to my next question. So suddenly, you come onto the scene, 2017, there's data everywhere, institutionally, various other databases all over the place. Every institution has theirs, and there's all this information. Now you suddenly show up and you've got an algorithm. You've got this ability to collect information based on specific variables and parameters. So you have gone beyond just working with single institutions and helping them to navigate their own personal databases. You're suggesting that you're giving them access to a myriad of other databases outside of their own jurisdiction. Tell us a little bit about, if I was, at institution A and I was, an ENT specialist, what are you going to be providing to me that's making that to really optimizing my workflow, my effectiveness, and really patient outcomes? What are you going to be providing to me?
That's a very good point, Natalie. And as we build our products, one of the key attributes where we put a lot of energy behind is building partnerships to get what we call privileged data sets. There is some publicly released data sets, especially in some of the high profiled areas, but we tend to want to look at how to bring different institutions together and get them motivated to work together in sharing that data, again, called privileged data sets. That's only the first step in the process. I mean, there's a lot of data out there. The ability to get it to what we call a curated data set that has a similar taxonomy or hierarchy to the data. So as you're bringing together 10 different data sets, they have very similar look and feel to extract patterns is a quite time-intensive process, as well as a critical step in that. It's not surprising we're located here in Houston. A lot of people don't know it, but the Texas Medical Center is the largest medical center in the world. 9 million patients come through the various institutions in the Texas Medical Center from all over the world. And so the ability to have relationships with multiple of those institutions, as well as in other parts of the country, are quite powerful.
So really interesting. So you do bring up an interesting point around privileged databases. So one of the things, every country, every jurisdiction has their own, applications and, privacy associated with certain sets and what have you. How have you been able to open that Pandora's box, if you will, and get into data that nobody wants to normally disclose? And in addition to that, every other AI company is also trying to equally access that privileged data. At which point are we finding that there's like this scatterfold of, systems? Maybe some of them are interoperable, some of them are not. At what point do you say that, InformAI is the panacea? Or like how are you differentiating, and how are you preventing there being multiple players that are all trying to access this privileged data?
Yeah, I mean, to some point, Natalie, you do see that, especially in the high-profile medical conditions involving oncology or cardiac. So we do see some of that. From our standpoint, one of our differentiators are myself and my management team have long-term relationships working with many of these institutions. So there's a level of trust that we're working together. The second part is we also do co-development together from a research standpoint. We publish together. Many of the products we build, we co-publish with our partners, which is another aspect of building a relationship with these institutions. So it's not unique to just getting data. There's a relationship that goes with that. And then the last part of that is obviously there's a need for what we're building. So these institutions many times become our first customers. And so the ability to work those pieces together. The other aspect I think that's unique and from my experience and others on my team from a consulting type of background is building products that are embedded in the clinical workflow. There's a lot of point solutions being built that are kind of islands in themselves. And we work very hard to embed our products into the existing clinical workflow. And as I always tell our customers and partners that the best AI solutions are the ones that are hidden. They work in the background and it's just part of your workflow process. And so those attributes together give us access to data, both from a trust standpoint, a process standpoint, and just building products that are beneficial to the institutions we team with.
So let's actually dissect the experience with one of your products, which is the paranasal sinus classifier. Tell us why it's a classifier, and just explaining about what AI does and why it's called a classifier. And as an ENT specialist coming into work, I'm I'm looking at MRIs, CT scans. How is my day going to be optimized? What is going to be different about what I'm doing in my day-to-day workflow?
Yeah, I mean, every product, Natalie, we build, we have kind of three screens we look at. We want to speed up the speed of medical decision-making at the point of care. So patients can move faster through the care continuum. The second is that we want to create insights that allow physicians to be more productive and improve their decision-making and how they want to treat patients. And so when we look at our Sinus, we call Sinus AI product, it's built on a proprietary medical image classifier set that we have within our company. It's focused on what's a disease state called sinusitis. And roughly 20 to 25% of the population, at least in North America, has aspects of sinus-related issues. On a given year, there's 11 million ENT office visits for sinus conditions and roughly about 700,000 sinus surgical procedures. We wanted to build a tool that could act on kind of the mission points that I talked about of putting a tool in the hands of the ENT and radiologist that could quickly triage a patient presence of the sinus disease that they have to quickly discern, is that an issue? And if it is an issue, are they potentially a candidate for some of the innovative surgical procedures that are out there? And so what our sinus image classifier does is within 30 seconds of receiving an image out of a CT scanner, be it in a hospital setting or a clinic setting, we present to the ENT and forward to the radiologist our best prediction of the presence of 23 disease states that involve sinusitis for them to review. And in the case of a severe case of sinusitis, it's escalated for that review so we can speed up an ENT's interaction with patients that have the most severe case of sinusitis needing an ENT's time. In the case of a patient not having the presence of the symptoms of sinusitis, then possibly a nurse practitioner or physician assistant could see that patient opposed to an ENT surgeon. And so we've positioned this particular product to bring that productivity improvement to both the clinic setting and hospital setting for the disease state sinusitis. Our product is currently cleared in Europe and the UK under CE mark, and we're undergoing 510K approval as we speak.
Very fascinating and very interesting. So on that note, whatever clinical trials you happen to be doing, what are the outcomes that you are seeking for? And at the end of the day, also, there's business models associated with people purchasing this software, this AI, these classifiers. And what metrics are you providing or outcomes that you sell to these people who are purchasing your units, your product? What are they expecting in terms of outcomes, benefits, optimizations, either profit and loss or some of the other sort of effective measures that they're looking at with patient outcomes?
Each country is a little bit different depending on how their healthcare is set up. In a more centralized healthcare, if you were to go to say the UK, it may take anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks for a radiologist to even look at the CT scan that comes out. And so this tool can quickly triage and get patients in front of the specialists that need it the most. In a more fee-for-service type setup here in the United States, productivity is quite important in a little bit different driver sense. And so this product, the value proposition to the ENT is the ability to see more patients and focus on the patients that ultimately will require surgical intervention with the aspect of screening those patients out. We've integrated this product directly in with the CT scanner in the clinical workflow, so it looks seamless to the ENT and radiologist in that process.
Very interesting. So at current time, the classifier and the algorithms and the technology that you built, is there built-in machine learning? Does it get smarter over time? What will this product look like 5-10 years from now? And will the 510K that you have, is there a discussion that you would actually have to reapply because this product is going to be a different product in 5 or 10 years?
That's a very good point. And the regulatory environment in most countries is evolving as we speak. For AI, or what's called software medical devices, basically, or software as a medical device. As those evolve, I think those will tend to open up. The reality is most of the applications we build have the capability to self-learn the patterns as it makes predictions, but the regulatory process today is still very much stepwise. And so as an application changes, you have to go back to either the FDA or the various regulatory bodies to get approval. And so, this is a new process for many regulatory organizations, and they're learning to kind of work on how to open that up more effectively. But at this point, the process to have an auto-learning algorithm is a very difficult regulatory process to go through. And so our product, in the case of Sinus AI, we have a transplant product we're working on. Those will get approved incrementally on a rolling basis as it learns. So what we're typically looking at is a yearly release of the product that has incremental learnings from the previous year after being deployed out in the field.
So currently, the system is being built on basically visual data. So data from scans, CT, MRIs, other sorts of things. So there's a visual component to that. Now comes COVID-19, and we're now in this world of a digital revolution, telemedicine, a lot of things being managed through patient-reported outcomes. We see a lot about things like decentralized trials and ambient biometrics, utilizing all kinds of units and tools, smartwatches, various other units, 24-hour glucose monitoring, Bluetooth, stethoscopes, et cetera. Is the plan in the future for your classifiers to start integrating or being operational with these other types of data sets to further enhance what you are looking at and the kinds of information you're providing to radiologists, ENT specialists, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. And as an example, we discussed with our sinus product, that is predominantly a neural network based on medical images, but other products we have under development involve both clinical data and image data and sensor data together, that fusion of that data together to make predictions. And so that's absolutely where I see, as more sensor data is generated, especially the push for telehealth, the ability to draw in that sensor data along with other algorithms. We call them ensemble of algorithms. That could be a combination of multiple machine learning algorithms with neural networks working together to make predictions. Products we're working on today that involve surgical risk predictors look at pre-op, intra-op, post-op, and then sensor data on the back end on how well a patient is recovering from the procedure.
You also currently have a product for brain cancer. Tell us a little bit about why, of all cancers, you selected brain cancer, and what is the plans for cancer management and optimization and predictions do you see in the future for your products?
Yeah, this particular area, if you look at brain cancer in particular, be it metastasized or glioblastoma, obviously is quite impactful to patients that have to go through that. And there's a tremendous opportunity to have an impact in extending the life expectancy of individuals, unfortunately having to go through that treatment. And it's a personal passion of mine to how to apply this technology in the highest impact areas. And it's not surprising, and Sinus was our first product, but as we've built other products, we're not only involved in oncology, but we're also involved in organ transplant and cardiac surgery. And so in the case of brain cancer, we have the ability to attack one of the issues in particular, which is on average about 1 in 4 biopsies miss the hotspot of the tumor in a person's brain cancer. And if you miss the hotspot in the biopsy, you understage or overstage the intensity of that tumor, and therefore you may not have an optimal treatment set. And so we've been able to work with one of the largest cancer centers in the world to look at how to bring machine learning and image detection together to assist clinicians and make recommendations for them to consider of where to take that biopsy to hit the hot spot of the tumor. And by being able to do that, you optimize the treatment set. And so that's typical also of products we have. We're doing work funded by the National Science Foundation in organ transplant, where we mix imaging data as well as clinical data to optimize the allocation of a donor organ with the best fit on the list of patients on a wait list. And so we as a company are very focused on working on these high impact type of solutions to leverage AI.
You also have a lot of really important partnerships that you have been planning and have conducted. We talked obviously about the Texas Medical Center, but you've also got strategic partners for the actual product, including NVIDIA. You're working with Amazon as well as Microsoft. Tell us a little bit about why you chose these particular tech giants, if you will, to be partners with InformAI.
Yeah, that's partnership, and everything we do is quite important. I mean, we're a small startup company, but to be able to get access to premier technical experts to augment our team and the ability to have partners to get product to market efficiently is obviously a success formula that we want to execute on. Relative to Google and Amazon and NVIDIA, we've been selected to work as part of their AI startup programs to build out our prototypes. The nature of what we're building and the high impact of what we're building obviously interest each one of those organizations. And obviously we value the technical expertise we can get access to by working with them. And so that's very much the strategy we execute. We also are part of Texas Medical Center's Innovation Center. We were also selected by Johnson & Johnson, the J Labs organization, to be part of their Houston facility. And so all those partnerships together give us the ability to, while being a small company, to really build big products and get them deployed into the market. And so that's a very key part of our ability to be successful in what we want to do as a company.
With all of this going on, we're now in the post-COVID era. Certainly, it's been an accelerant for digital optimizations. It was always there, but it's augmented it and it's sped it up. What is your sort of view on the evolution of where healthcare is going now with AI and very intense predictive analytics and sort of these really robust databases? Where are we going in terms of the way healthcare is managed? Do you see this moving from a sick care reactive model to something that's much more wellness based? And if so, what does that look like?
From my experience, I think, especially, and I'm speaking from here in the United States, it's an evolutionary transformation. It's very difficult with the structure of fee for service to change things overnight. But COVID opened up a discussion that was much more difficult before to have around telehealth, the ability to share information, the ability to look at ways to improve operational efficiency. And so I see kind of on the fringes of the healthcare, the doors are starting to open up to test these products. And so over the next 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years, the ability to augment telehealth with AI, the ability to have AI supporting surgical robotics, the ability to use AI in navigation systems. I think those will be kind of the first areas, along with what we've been discussing today, to open up there. But as the healthcare system looks at more of a value-based delivery of patient care opposed to fee-for-service, it changes the discussion to using the productivity improvement and insights that these kind of tools can bring, especially when organizations in a value-based delivery have either a bundled payment for delivering a service or expectations of certain level of stay in hospital and limited readmissions. And so many of the surgical risk predictors we're building today not only look at survivability and the mortality prediction, we've been able to show that our models are quite good at predicting readmission rates and cost for total hospitalization costs for those procedures. And so as that data becomes more readily available and those insights, that can help to drive some of that transformation that's there.
And it'll be really interesting as well too, Jim, seeing eventually the correlation between what you're predicting interventions and to see if that will impact what those predictions will have said around rehospitalizations and costs, et cetera. So I think that's going to really, create the full circle in 360 on the effectiveness of how all of this should work together.
Yes, I mean, data and curated data sets are like a flashlight. If you can look at the patterns, it illuminates areas for productivity enhancement and improvement in patient care. Obviously, we're not positioning our AI products to make decisions on the behalf of clinicians. This is data sets, this is data insights that have always been there, but hidden in the data, and presenting those to the clinicians to factor into their treatment planning.
Absolutely. And so as we sort of look forward, unfortunately, every time we move forward 2 steps, there's always sometimes things that are pulling us back 1 step behind. And those are usually fostered by people's fears. One of those fears, of course, has to do with all kinds of things that we hear in the media all the time around privacy and security issues. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around what AI is and 5G, and this all started with conspiracy theories with the vaccines and on it goes. How is your company forging ahead, dealing with science and trying to overcome some of the naysayers, if you will, of this progression in technology?
Yeah, I mean, first, there's an aspect of making sure that the AI algorithms are not biased and the predictions. And so, as I talked about curated data sets, the ability to have a data set that reflects the general population is quite important. And the ability to prove explainability is something quite important with AI algorithms. So every product we build, if it's a machine learning problem that or insights we're providing, we actually show the features that drove that decision. If it's a medical imaging related application, we point to where in the image scan the decision was made. So there's trust in using these products. But like any change, it's not unique to AI, but any business transformation that involves technology, there's an adoption cycle of building champions for that, demonstrating and building trust with the product that's there. That's quite key. And so, when we look at kind of, call them barriers or things that slow down the adoption, that how you transform that and build trust is quite important. I think the regulatory approvals play a very key part in that too. As I mentioned, it's still somewhat of a work in progress. The last time I looked, I think there was about 360 approved AI devices in Europe and in the US. And so it's not widely approved yet at this point. So I think as we go over the next 5 to 10 years, there'll be a substantial increase in that. The other aspect in the point you raised earlier is in a fee-for-service environment, the reimbursement codes become quite important too. And we're starting to see some progress in that where AI devices are now being reimbursed for direct use in certain cases. And so I think those pieces coming together, regulatory approval, technology adoption, and trust and reimbursement codes kind of work hand in hand to accelerate this type of adoption of these types of tools.
Jimmy, you raise a really important word, and we oftentimes take it for granted, and that is the word trust. As we think about this whole issue, there's been books written on surveillance capitalism. There's a lot of concerns around too much access to data. A lot of times you hear the old cliches that if you're not paying for the data, then you are the product. Issues around the Googles and the Amazons and access to your data and utilizing it, et cetera. So one of the things that comes to mind is really the essence around blockchain. Not so much in the whole NFT and cryptocurrency piece, but more in terms of having this sort of encrypted, ownership, access to your own data. Is this going to be an important part of the future equation around decentralized autonomous organizations, smart contracts, how people are leveraging data or not, and somehow always bringing them back to the originator of that data, which is the patient? Where do you see the future of all of that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at data sharing today, the IRB or approval to look at data is quite important. So a lot of times when we build products initially, we're going through a review with the institutions to make sure there's a need for the data and there's patient consent to use that data. Generally, we take most of our data through a full anonymization, so we don't carry PHI or personal information into the training, and that's an important part for what we do as a company. Relative to your question about the audit trail and to build trust in that transaction, kind of the next step that's been occurring, and we're using it to some extent with our products, is maybe what's called federated learning, where you get the benefit of seeing what's in some other person's institution's data without taking possession of the data. And so we see more of that occurring now too, where you can train on another institution's data without ever pulling it into your organization. And so there's a level of security that can come with that. And then from a third part is the ability to demonstrate your organization has the protocol and processes in place. There's a process procedures around high trust, showing you certifies high trust that you're a trusted partner for the institutions.
Absolutely. A pharma company wants to partner with InformAI. What would that look like, and how would a typical pharmaceutical or medical device company partner or collaborate, clinical trials or what have you? How could they potentially work with InformAI?
Yeah, most of the work we do today with our products are with imaging PACS companies and medical device companies. And every product we build, and maybe this is my consulting background, is we spend a lot of time on customer discovery. There's a lot of companies that build products in this space because the data is available, be it publicly or in some cases privileged. We take a different approach. We really look at what the need in the market is. We spend a lot of time on customer discovery, seeing what the value proposition could be, what's the benefit. And that leads us then obviously to a lot of conversations with medical device companies. So as we're building the product, we generally know who our first 1, 2, or 3 customers are. And so we take advantage of that expertise medical device companies have, because ultimately we're building a product to fit their need. And in some cases, we collaborate together on the product. In some cases, we build it and they're customer one of multiple customers. But there's a lot of knowledge in those organizations too of how to position these products into the market and getting access to what they would call their key opinion leaders.
Absolutely. And now we're getting into this whole new world of digital opinion leaders, which are very, very different. You see this across the echelon of new opinion leaders that are digitally based. So just to sort of cap this off, I'm just curious as well, Jim, you're seeing a lot of things are progressing very, very rapidly. You're sort of one of the pioneers around, software as a medical device and going through the 510(k) process, and a lot of novel things that are happening from a regulatory and a market access standpoint. What are your thoughts, plans, hopes, and predictions for the future, just generally for your company, but also for healthcare in general?
I think for me, I see as, it's a transformation process. So you move from point solutions to enterprise solutions to ultimately the technologies in the background. And we saw that with the internet. We've seen that through different waves of technology coming through. And so, my ambitions for the company and what I have kind of prediction of the future is these algorithms will be running in the background of workflows. And so the companies that have that built into their products have the partnerships with the companies that basically are the leaders of these enterprise workflow processes are going to be the ones that will succeed in this market. There clearly is going to be some element of consolidation over the next 5 to 10 years of players in this market. And we're positioning our company to be one of the consolidators and then working with strong partners out in the field.
Beautiful. So thank you so much for all the great conversation and the amazing things that InformAI is doing. For anybody who's listening or watching to the show and you are interested in connecting, contacting, collaborating with InformAI or speaking with Jim, we will be leaving his contact details in the show notes below. So please be on the lookout for that. In addition, we encourage you to check out impetusdigital.com. These are precisely the kinds of strategic conversations that we have with physicians, allied healthcare providers, payers, patients, and everything in between to work asynchronously through a variety of tools that we provide in the Impetus Insight platform so that you can work as a pharma company or a medical device company to start planning what you're going to be doing beyond what your traditional business model is. How can you leverage some of these diagnostic AI technologies, these ideas, how you're going to be impinging on physician workflow so that patients that may have never been diagnosed, for example, with a sinusitis-based issue, you're now going to be getting access and people are going to be, they're going to be triaged proactively. So how can you actually collaborate to start thinking about these things proactively? So we encourage you to look at that and we can actually help you to move those agendas forward using our Insight platform. Thank you everybody for your time and attention. We'd appreciate if you can like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review on iTunes. It would be so appreciated. Thank you so much. And Jim, this was an outstanding conversation. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Natalie. It's good to be part of this and have a good day.